You guys know I love podcasting and listening to podcasts, and I'm guessing if you're listening to this that you love podcasts too. Have you ever considered podcasting yourself? It is a great way to reach your audience, grow your know, like and trust factor, and not need to show your face unless you want to. If it is something you've thought about but you don't know where to start, then head over to becomeapodcaster.uk/BAP quiz, BAP quiz, to access a 2-minute quiz that will help you work out what type of podcast might suit you. That's becomeapodcaster.uk/BAP quiz. Good communication is the bridge between confusion and clarity. Nat Turner. You're listening to the Mindset and Action podcast, bringing you the map to grow and streamline your business in 2023. I'm your host, Donna Eade, your go-to gal for all things podcasting, planning and productivity. And I'll be bringing you all that plus mindset goodness from experts with knowledge to share. Let's make 2023 the year of success in your business. Welcome back to the podcast, everybody. Before we jump into today's show, I wanted to remind you that you can join the Pod Squad. If you head over to donnaeade.com/pod squad, you can sign up for email notifications, and that email will actually let you have access to a very special extra level of Pod Squad. So if you want to become a Pod Squad official member, there are a couple of levels you can join. You can also join the Facebook group. That will all be in the email that comes out if you join the Pod Squad at donnaeade.com/Pod Squad. Now let's get into today's episode. I have another fantastic guest today. She is a dynamic trainer who specializes in presentation skills, resilience and creativity workshops. With a unique background in theatre and stand-up comedy, she brings fun and creativity and a practical approach to her training. Her passion for personal development is evident in everything she does. So if you are ready to up-level how you present yourself and boost your confidence, you are in for a treat. Please join me in welcoming Grace Fogarty to the show. Grace, welcome to the podcast. I am so excited to have you here today. Thank you so much for coming on.
Hi, Donna. It's a pleasure to be here. I'm really excited to speak to you.
I absolutely love having guests on the show. Everybody who listens to this podcast is probably sick of me saying it, but I just really enjoy sort of getting into the minds of other people and to like extracting knowledge from them for my audience, but also a little selfishly for myself. So it's a great way to learn and gain knowledge and also share different people with different people. I'm like, I like to network and I like to sort of connect people. So being able to have guests on the show is always an absolute pleasure and a privilege. So thank you so much for coming on. I would love to start with giving our listeners a little bit of a background into you, who you are, what you do, where you've come from, and how you ended up where you are now. That could be a podcast in itself, I'm sure. But if you could give us the Cliff Notes version, tell us a little bit more about yourself.
Yeah, of course. So I'm a confidence and wellbeing trainer. But previously, I have spent the last pretty much 10 years working for charities and also consultancies, designing and delivering skill development workshops. And that has been for people ranging from high school students all the way through to senior managers. I've worked with groups of people from sort of 10 to 200 in a room and online. So I've had quite a varied career in the kind of learning and development world. And this year I decided that I wanted a new challenge and I decided to set myself up as a freelancer. I'm a confidence and wellbeing trainer and I specialize mainly in confidence and presentation skills, building resilience and using creativity. And I guess everything that I do is kind of stems from my belief that for you to be at your best, you really need to feel at your best. So that's kind of the ethos I bring into everything I do. I also, outside of training, I have got a bit of a kind of theatrical background. So I have recently started doing stand-up comedy, and I'm also writing a one-woman show that I performed last year, and I'm now evolving a longer version. So through the work that I do, I try and bring in that kind of love for performance and theatre combine it with the passion I have for helping people develop, to run workshops and training that is fun, it's creative, it's memorable, but it's really practical as well.
I love that. And I love that you bring that in, because I think confidence is a big thing for people. And
Yeah.
when you run your own business, you have got to be your biggest cheerleader. Nobody is going to care as much about your business as you do. It's just a fact. And if you can't shout about it, who else is going to do it? You know, I'm
Absolutely.
this is something I say this because I'm talking to myself here, guys, because I find it really difficult to shout about myself. Yet, if I find somebody I like, I can shout them from the rooftops. And like every time I go on to any kind of meeting, networking or anything, and my friend Carly's there, I always tell everybody, you've got to go and join Carly's group. It's a fantastic, because I absolutely love being in there. And I am a huge cheerleader for her and what she does. And the same with Catherine, who I do my exercise with. I am always shouting about Vitality Rooms and how wonderful it is to be in there. So I'm kind of a bit of the opposite, where I'm quite happy to shout about everybody else and not so happy to shout about myself. But I think a lot of people are like that. A lot of people find it really hard to promote themselves. They don't want to feel salesy. They don't want to feel like people think they're all about me. And it can be a big struggle. So I'm really excited to get into the topic of presenting yourself and how we actually portray ourselves and come across when we're talking to people. Because I've decided that there are two categories, or people fall into two different categories. So there's the people that love talking about themselves, and that's not necessarily a bad thing, but sometimes I think this is what the other group struggle with. They know the people that talk about themselves and just talk and never listen. And they go, I don't want to be like that. So they go the completely opposite way, and they fall into the other camp where they don't talk about themselves at all, or they say the least they can get away with so they can shut up again because they don't want to come across like these other people. And I think there is skills to be learned from both sides, because the people that don't talk about themselves are usually better listeners, and the people who talk about themselves have got that confidence but can often struggle on the listening side of things. So I'm really excited to jump into this conversation. So why is it important that we are concise when we would deliver our, who we are and what we do?
So I think the first reason is because we have really short attention spans these days as humans, and that is for loads of different reasons. Things like social media technology has contributed to the fact that we are consuming information all the time, and our ability to take in new information, listen, engage, and remember things is well, I don't know what it used to be like, but it certainly feels like in this day and age we need information, and we need it quickly. So when you're presenting yourself, and if you're presenting your business, you've got to keep that in mind. People need it to be made really, really easy to understand who you are and what you do, and most importantly, they need to be able to tell other people that. So when you talk about who you are and what you do, ideally you want someone to hear your one sentence, your pitch, and be like, right, Donna, I know exactly what she does. She runs a podcast. I know a friend who wants to be on a podcast. Boom, I can make the connection, and it's as simple as that. I think, and if you're not being concise and you lose people, it's really hard to kind of come back from that. So yeah, I think that's kind of part of it.
Yeah, I feel like that is so true, because sometimes people do their 1 minutes in networking meetings and I walk away from it going, I don't actually know what they do.
Yeah, exactly. And you can say a lot in 1 minute, right?
Yeah.
Like you in theory, you should be able to say who you are, what you do, how people can work with you, and a few other things. But if you don't use the time concisely, then yeah, like you say, people might walk away feeling a bit unsure.
Yeah. That's just come to me, because yesterday I was at a networking meeting, and one of the ladies, she was telling a fantastic story. I was completely enthralled with the story, but she went over her 1 minute and she came to the end of it and I was like, I'm not sure what she's actually pitching that she does. And
Yeah.
then she happens to be an ambassador for Tropic, which Catherine later sort of said, oh, and she does do skincare. You might see it on the desk there. But that wasn't what she was aiming at. And she came up to me afterwards and she said she's got to work on her pitch, because actually what she really wants to get into is public speaking and being a public speaker. And the storytelling she's got down, because I was enthralled by her story. But she just didn't get that across in that 1 minute that's where she wants to head. So she knew that she got to work on it. But yeah, that power of being concise to the point is big.
I'd also 100%. And I also think it's really important in terms of building trust and credibility in who you are and your business. So, you know, if you're an audience member and you see someone talking about the business or telling a story and then they run over, or you weren't quite sure of the point, like whether consciously or subconsciously, it does impact your perception of them. And, you know, we make all sorts of judgments without realizing, but you might start to find you're making a judgment about what that person might be like to work with, or you know, whether you want to follow up with them or not. So it's also just helping build trust in you as a business owner, which is also, you know, as we all know, incredibly important.
Yeah, absolutely. So what are, and I always like to go for the impact version, what are the 3 things that you see people doing wrong the most when it comes to introducing themselves, whether it be in a networking situation or otherwise?
So I think there's a few things that kind of commonly seem to happen. The first is, and I think this is probably due to nerves, but people not using their body language or their tone of voice to really show the room that they're feeling confident. So I've seen people, you know, maybe nervously looking down at their notes, or just talking in quite a monotone tone of voice, or perhaps just even being a little bit hunched, or, you know, and it's understandable. People feel nervous. It's a nerve-wracking thing to do. But if your body language shows us that you're nervous, it's really hard to feel, you know, it's hard to get that confidence across. So I think kind of, but nervous body language is one of the big things that I quite often see.
I love that you said that, because I actually watch a guy on YouTube. His channel's called Behavioral Arts, and his name is Spidey. That's his stage name, and he's been on TV a lot, so some people may have heard of him. I had seen him on TV a couple of times previously, but he is an illusionist, a mentalist, and he has trained in body language, interrogation techniques. He's worked with facial expressionists, you know, the really Paul Ekman and all of that. So really important people in that arena. And his channel analyzes body language. And what you said there about people like doing this is called turtling.
I haven't heard of that.
Take your head in and you raise your shoulders and you try and make yourself as small as possible, because you don't want to take up space. And he said, and the looking down is protecting, because it's protecting our necks. So what we do is like, it's like ingrained from like billions of years ago when we were like cavemen, and it's the protection of the neck, of the vital organs. You'll find that men will often, you know, the vital organs will get covered. The women will often put their hands across their stomachs and things like that, because it's a protection thing. So when you say that, I'm very much now I've always been a people watcher, but now I understand a bit of body language as well. So I'm just like, oh, and I see people doing this. That's contempt. It's the universal expression for contempt. And, you know, obviously podcast listeners, you didn't see that, but it's raising one side of the mouth so that your nose kind of scrunches, but it doesn't happen on the other side. And it's the only universal expression that happens on one side of the face. Everything else is symmetrical. And it's fascinating. So body language is really powerful. And the thing is even if you don't know these things, like the things that I've just said, you get a feeling from it. It makes you feel some kind of way when somebody is curling into themselves versus when somebody is standing up straight and looking into your eyes. It makes a huge difference. So I love that.
Yeah, that's emotional contagion, what you've just referenced there.
Mm.
The fact, emotions they do carry, and it takes very little for people around you to feel that. So yeah, that's fascinating. I hadn't heard of I
Yeah.
hadn't heard
I
of
will link
Testing.
his channel in the show notes,
Yeah.
guys. Go and have a look at him because it's fascinating. He's done body language on Meghan Markle and Harry and all of that stuff that's
Mm,
been going on. He did the whole of the Amber Heard Johnny Depp trial, which is
wow.
when I found him on YouTube. And he does lots of things. He did a reality TV show, but he doesn't want to continue to do that stuff.
Mm,
But yeah, he does different topics, different body language. He did recently he did Meghan Markle's family did a special on a channel, and he was evaluating what the father, sister, and brother's body language was saying. It's just fascinating to learn. You do
mm,
suddenly start to pick these things up, and you can sort of see it happening. And lip compressions, when people do
mm.
that, it's something that they don't want to say. Usually they're trying to stop themselves from saying things, and it's fascinating
Yeah.
stuff. Okay, so body language is the number one thing that people,
Yes.
well, maybe not the number one thing, but the first thing that we're talked
It's a
about.
it's a biggie. Yeah.
It's a biggie, yeah.
Yeah.
What's the next one?
So I see this happen quite often online with networking events and that kind of thing, but people
Mm.
reading directly from their notes. So I'm sure lots of people listening have got their pitch written down. It's obviously helpful to have notes and to think through your structure. But what I see people doing is they just read directly from their notes. And immediately, as soon as you start to do that, it's really hard to sound natural and authentic. And people
Mm.
tend to sound a little bit controlled, perhaps a little bit wooden or robotic. And again, even if they're not feeling nervous, I think it comes across as quite a nervous thing to do. And as a listener, it's really hard to engage because when someone's just reading their notes, you think, you've done this before. You're not really bringing it to life, and it's and again, it's understandable why people do it. But I think there's such a huge difference between someone that reads from their scripted notes versus someone who can deliver a pitch in a more kind of conversational, natural way.
I think that's very true, that people tend to, it becomes stilted what they say because they're
Yeah.
reading it. So they're trying to say the words, but they're also trying to read a few words ahead to
Hmm.
get the next bit into their head. And it can come across as stilted. I think there is only one exception that I want to put out there for that. Perhaps, you may disagree with me, but I've been to networking events where people have written like poems or something like that as their 1 minute,
Yeah.
and they will read that. And I find those really interesting. But what you said about people reading notes and being quite monotone is you don't get that natural inflection of
Mm,
the excitement or the hard hitting point that they want to make. The emphasis isn't there necessarily when you read from a script as when you do it naturally. But with a
mm,
poem or something like that, I think obviously you want to get it right, so you read it, but if they've practiced it
mm.
enough, it can come across really well even though they're reading it.
Yeah, and I think if you're doing some, I mean, I love that. I think if you're reading a poem as part of your pitch, that's great. And I guess
Mm.
that's, I suppose, it's a little bit more of a performance, isn't it? And
Yeah,
like you say,
yeah,
you want to deliver it right. So hopefully through their tone of voice and things, they can make that sound exciting. And
yeah,
it's something a bit different, which is
yeah.
amazing.
It sticks in your head, it really does. Yeah.
Exactly.
So I love that, and I think that is so true of a lot of people I see that read their pitch, and I'm thinking, hang on a minute, this is a 1 minute pitch about you, and you should
Mm,
know what you do better than anyone else. Why do you need to read it?
exactly. Exactly.
Unless it's a
Yeah.
poem or something, it's like it
Yeah.
doesn't make sense to me. So I think that's very important. Practice,
Mm,
practice, practice, practice makes perfect. Talk to yourself in the mirror until you've got it down and you don't need to look at notes.
hmm
So brilliant. So body language, reading from your notes.
hmm
What's number three?
Um, Over explaining what you do rather than who you are. I think this is something I've seen happen a few times in pitches where people are really excited. Maybe they've got a framework or a process or something, something that they go through with their clients and their customers. And that's what they spend their minute talking through. I kind of saw this happen a couple of months ago in a networking event where someone talked through a kind of 6-stage process of how they work with a customer. And it's like, that's great that you've got that process, but that's so much detail for a pitch. And
Mm,
actually, I think the focus of a pitch is to explain who you are, like bring your whole personality, be authentic, because ultimately people want to work with people that they know and that they like and that they trust. And if
hmm.
you jump too quickly into the what you do, you lose that opportunity to build some rapport and a relationship. And
Yeah.
again, you run the risk of people walking away thinking, okay, so I know what the process is, but I still don't really get who they are. What's their business? Why do they do what they do? You know, why would I work for them over someone else that does something similar? So I think it's, the focus on a pitch really needs to be on who you are and why, rather than getting into the details of the what.
Yes, I love that. I think that is so true because I was going to say people buy people. That's what we sort of learn,
Exactly.
we
Yes.
need to know who you are. It's like, okay, so for me, going into a room and talking about how I teach people how to podcast isn't going to be as valuable to them as me saying, I teach people how to podcast. This is where I come
Mm,
from. This is how I got here. This is why I enjoy doing it, so that people know the type of person that I am, so they can go, oh, she teaches podcasting and I quite liked her. I liked her story. I liked this element about who she is.
mm,
I'll talk to her more about that, because they can always come and find out more about what you do, but you've only got
mm,
that first 7 seconds or whatever it is to make that first impression. And
yeah.
you want them to remember who you are, not
Yes.
necessarily exactly how you do what you do.
No.
Mm,
Totally. Yeah.
love
Because
that.
when we've all had it when we've been the customer and you're drawn to someone that you get on with. And like 9 times out of 10, you don't really mind what the process is. You just want to work with that person because there's something about them that interests you or excites you. So, yeah, super
Yeah.
important.
Definitely, definitely. Okay, so those are three things that we see people doing wrong. You know, poor body language, reading from notes, over explaining the what we do.
Mm,
What are three things we can do to improve our pitch? Obviously, the opposite of all of those things, but let's get a bit more granular with it. What three things could we do that would really just elevate the pitch straight off the
mhm.
bat and make it better?
So I think you want to have a really clear structure. So it's easy for you to learn, but it's easy for people to digest. And for me,
Mm,
there are I suppose there's three different components to include in your structure. The first one, we talked about it a little bit already, but make it personal. So don't be afraid to bring a bit of your personality into your pitch. That could be, saying where you're from or saying something about your family or saying an interesting story or a poem. Like, it doesn't matter what it is, but bring a little bit of your personality in straight away so that your pitch is personal to you and it's authentic. Because, like
mm,
we've just said, people buy people. So making it personal, I think, is super important. Also, saying why you do what you do as part of that personal thing is, again, it's a nice way for you to kind of touch on your values and make it specific to you as a person.
yeah, yeah, definitely. I really feel that the more you can let people see your personality, the more you're going to attract those people that are the right customers for you. If they don't know the type of person you are, and I've seen this in the wedding industry before, where people are just going over that for that sale. It doesn't matter who
Mm,
these clients are. I just need to get the sales in. I want to get the couples in, and then they turn out to be like the bridezilla from hell. And it's because the connection wasn't there, the personality don't match. And if you don't show your personality, then, because a lot of people think, oh God, my personality might be overpowering for some people. They're not your people. That's fine. You
yes,
want to attract the people
exactly.
that are your people, and then
Yeah.
they're going to love working with you. You want to
Hmm.
repel the people that aren't going, are going to find you too overpowering with your personality, because they're going to complain about working
Mm,
with you, and you don't want that. So I think bringing your personality into it and bringing that personal element into your pitch is really a very key point to be made. If
hmm.
somebody can't go away and go, do you know what? That Donna, she was great because she really liked XYZ, and so do I. And I really sort of gelled with her personality, because I've done
Mm,
that before on networking events, gone, do you know what, I really, really liked that person. And there were other
mm,
people that I couldn't even tell you who they were.
yeah,
Couldn't tell
I
you
know.
one thing about them. And that's fine. But if they actually have personality that they didn't bring through because they didn't touch on that personal, they didn't go deep into that bit, you know, they could be my people, and I've missed out on it because they didn't bring it through in their pitch, and I missed the
Mm,
opportunity to get to know them and want to work with them. So it's a huge factor. I love that one. Brilliant. What's
mhm.
next?
Next is talk about what makes you credible. So this could be the experience that you've had, whether that is the number of years, how long you've been in an industry, how many clients you've worked with on in a specific area. It might be knowledge that you've got. So have you done some studying? Have you done training? Have you got a qualification in the world that you work in? Choose one thing. And with each of these three things, my kind of golden rule is to write one sentence about each of them. We don't
Mm,
need war and peace on all the experience you've ever had. We just want to know the thing that makes you most credible when you're talking about what it is you do. And I think, again, like to go back to what we were talking about earlier, it's just such an easy way for people to trust you straight
mm,
away, is to
yes.
say, why should you work with me? It's because I've got this experience or this knowledge.
Oh, I love that. So for me, talking about teaching people to podcast, my thing would be, I've been running my own podcast, everything to do with the podcast from start to finish for the last 3 years. So I have the
Exactly.
experience.
Brilliant.
Yeah.
Hmm.
Yeah. I love
Yes.
that. Yeah.
Yeah.
And I think a lot of people miss that out. And I know one of the things that I've always found fascinating is my pure desire to need to have a certificate in something. Like, I am a
Mm,
serial learner. I absolutely love learning, but I am notorious for feeling like I am not worthy or I am not good enough. I have imposter syndrome if I don't have the certificate. And in fairness, the certificate does not take that away. So I did my diploma. I was a wedding photographer before I had a photography qualification. And I did my qualification whilst I was doing my wedding photography because I felt like I needed that certificate to say,
mm,
look, I'm a professional. Yet, even after I got it, I still felt like I wasn't good enough to be charging for it. My own
mm.
personal issues I need to conquer. But that's why I'm not a photographer anymore. But the nobody ever asked
Mm,
where my certificate in photography.
yeah,
Nobody ever asked for your qualifications in these things. You
no.
know, you go to a beauty salon, and that's something that's really scary. There can be some really dangerous contraindications if treatment is done incorrectly. Yet, how many
Mm,
times have you ever walked into a salon and said, "Where are your certificates?" Now, a
hmm.
lot of the time, salons will have them on display, and I think there's something legal legally about having, so I know they have to have their insurance on display, which generally means that they've got qualifications, because otherwise you can't get the insurance.
Mm,
But do you ever pay attention to it? Do you ever look for it? Do you ever ask for it? No, we really don't.
no.
And it's much more about the personality and the experience. You know, if they've been in the high street for the last 10 years, you figure they've got to be pretty good because they've managed to keep their business open. So you
Yeah,
go on that kind of stuff. So it's really important to lead. And I would say, more over the qualification, the
totally.
experience that you've
Yeah.
got.
And I really like what you just said about the experience in podcasting. If someone wants to learn how to podcast, the fact that you've been doing it for 3 years is huge to them. So even if you felt a little bit of imposter syndrome, you know, I'm not saying that you do, but if
Mm.
you did, you have to remember that the people that are coming to you don't have the experience you have, and that's why
Yeah.
they want you. So even if you think you need 15 years and 10 certificates, it's, you know, it's not true. 3 years experience is
Yeah.
amazing, and you can shout about that. And actually that's all people need to know, because
Yeah.
they're, you know, they don't have any experience. That's what makes you someone they want to work with.
Yeah. And that's something that Amy Porterfield says in her book, 2 Weeks Notice, that I've spoken
Mm,
about many times, is that you just need that 10% edge to teach
yes.
somebody something. As long as you're a
Yeah.
few steps ahead of them, they can learn from you and get value from you. So I
Yeah.
think oftentimes we are quite hard on ourselves when it comes to that stuff. So love that. What's number 3?
Number three is what makes you unique. So it's a little bit different to your personal, your personality and who you are.
Mm.
When you're thinking about your kind of one sentence on what makes you unique, this is when you're thinking about what is it that makes me different, that makes me stand out from someone else that's doing something similar to me. And that could be loads of different things. Like it could be the way that you work with your clients, a particular testimonial you want to bring to life. Is there like a quality that you have? Are you really empathetic? Do you like to invest time in getting to know your customers? Are you really creative? Like when I always like to mention the fact that I do stand-up comedy and
Mm.
script writing, because in the training world, I know that that's what makes me a bit different to other trainers. And so I think, yeah, like, this can be quite hard as well for ourselves to reflect on, but
Yeah.
really challenge yourself to think, what is it that makes you different to all the other people in your field, and shout about it. What's the one sentence so that you can share that with people?
Yeah. That's good. I like that. I like the unique things, and I like it if it can be quirky. So for you, stand-up
Mm.
comedy, I'm like, girl, my God. Yeah, I need to learn from you, because if you've got the confidence to stand up there on stage, especially doing this one woman show, comedy's hard. Like I would never, like, just gives me anxiety just thinking about it. Like I absolutely love singing. And
Mm.
I have been a singer most of my life. I was in all the school choirs, was part of a choir in my adulthood, and led worship at church for a little while. I absolutely love to sing.
I love that.
So, but when I'd get a solo in the choir, and it's so weird
Mm.
because I would sing really loud when I was part of the group, and then I'd get given a solo and I'd be like, oh my God. And I remember that I put myself forward one Christmas for a solo because we'd had a year, we had our first year as choir. This was as an adult. We had our first year, our inaugural concert, and it was packed because it was the first year and everybody came. The next year we weren't expecting as many people, and the weather had been really like it was really Christmassy around Christmas, which was bizarre, and we expected the hall to be pretty empty, and in fact a lot of the choir were ill. It was like there was a bug going round, and we sort of lost half the choir to illness, and I decided that I wanted to sing Bring Him Home from Les Mis.
Nice.
And the place was packed. There was standing room only, and I was like, so nervous. And I remember my friend in the choir, he was introducing me, so he took me by the hand and he took me up there. He stood there talking, and he was saying, because he could feel me shaking and he wanted to give me just a minute to like gather myself. That was like the worst thing. It was just getting worse by the minute. I was just like, I just need to sing and get off. And you can hear it. We recorded it. It's on the internet somewhere, because I was really proud of the fact that I did it. But you can't see me because my camera was broken.
Oh.
We'd done a concert before in a different venue, and I balanced my camera on the edge of the upstairs balcony whilst I was doing the putting the tripod down. And as I put the tripod down, I moved it and it knocked the camera over, and it was stuck on the zoomed in thing.
Oh, no.
So where we were, you can zoom. So it was literally a
No.
picture of the back wall.
Oh.
So it's just a brick wall, but then me singing. And yeah, I was really proud of it, but it makes me so nervous to do that. And that was a really nice little story, but I've completely lost why I actually told it.
That was great.
But
I was really hooked on every word.
It's a unique thing about me, is like when I've got that experience of singing,
Absolutely.
and singing in front of people and performing, very much like you with your performing side, but being able to have that as something that you can pull on and say, look, I've had this experience and it helps me to be able to be good at what I do, is really, really fantastic. And again, it's learning something about you, because yours can be used to say, this is what makes me unique in my business, because I can pull on the experience from here and make it exciting and fun, like you said at the beginning of the podcast. And somebody else isn't going to have that, but it also gives us more of an insight into who you are and the type of person you are, so that we know, you know what, Grace would be really fun to work with because she's got that little bit of a theatre background. So, you know, and theatre people are always fun. So I love that. I love those 3 takeaways. So it's been a really good conversation, and I hope that what the listeners are going to take away from this is that it doesn't have to be perfect. You know, we're not going for perfection here, but there are things that you can do to improve how you come across and the takeaways that people can gain from that 1 minute or that quick introduction. And I think that we can be a bit more proud of ourselves and what we're doing and what we're achieving, and not hide under a bushel, as you know my nan would have said.
Get out from under the bushel.
no lights hiding under bushels, please. One thing, and I haven't put this out to you, but I think it would be a good one to ask before we sign off, is how can you tell that you're losing someone and you need to wrap it up?
Oh, that's a really good question. I think it kind of comes back to some of the points we were talking about earlier with you as a presenter, but you can apply it to your audience. So body language is a huge indicator of whether someone is listening to you and paying attention. So as soon as you start to notice people in your audience are looking away, they're fiddling with something, they've got their arms folded, they're distracted, that's when you know that you've kind of lost their attention. It's when people are leaning forward, maybe they're nodding, they're smiling, they're engaged, that you know that you've got them hooked. So I think as soon as you start to notice or you feel that change in energy in the room, that's when you know that either you've got to pull something out of the bag and tell something that's going to bring them back into the room. So whether that you might want to call it out or tell a joke, or, say something that's kind of off script. If you do a longer presentation, maybe offer a break. Again, this is if you're doing 20-30 minutes, but you could kind of call it out and address it. Or you're going to move to your wrap up, and you've got to make it quick and succinct. And at that point, you want to really be reiterating the key points, so that if people suddenly realize something's ending and they think, oh God, I haven't been listening for the last 30 seconds, the last thing you say is reminding them of the key points you need them to be taking away from your pitch.
Oh, I love that. And I think that's very important, especially if you've got a longer talk, that you need to be paying attention for those things. And I think a lot of the time people that are speaking are so in the zone of speaking and what I've got to say and how I've got to say it, and they're just like almost gliding over the people as well, not really paying attention to the people, not looking in their eyes, that they totally miss that. I've been in so many presentations where I thought, oh God, how much longer have we got to sit here for? And do exactly what you suddenly leaning back in the chair, folding the arms, hand in the head, looking off, like maybe even picking up the phone and scrolling the phone. Like these things happen. You've got to be watching for it. I think that's very good. Very good. Lovely. Oh, thank you so much for coming on, Grace. It's been a fantastic conversation. I think lots of useful tips in there for people.
Yeah, okay. It's been a pleasure to be here.
Good. So tell people how they can get hold of you. Have you got any workshops or anything coming up soon that people can come to? Tell us a little bit about how we can connect with you and work with you.
Yeah, absolutely. So just kind of to connect with me, gracefogarty.co.uk is my website where you can get in touch with me. And yeah, I've got more bits and bobs about what I do. The upcoming workshops I've got there's 2 actually. So one is called Present to Grow. This is going to be an online workshop, and I'm really excited. I'm collaborating with a woman called Susan Barrett, who is an IT specialist, and she does IT training. So we are collaborating, and we are running a workshop that is all about how to create a really engaging, memorable presentation so you can pitch yourself, you can stay in people's minds, and ultimately you can grow your business. So it's called Present to Grow. We're going to run it twice online, once on the 20th and once on the 29th of June. And so I can send you the link if you want to Do you include it in your show notes?
Fabulous. Yeah, we'll put it in the show notes. Absolutely.
Wonderful. The other thing that I'm doing is a 3-part program that I'm running called Nurture to Grow. So this is for anyone who owns their own business. They might be a freelancer or a sole trader. And the focus is on helping you to grow your confidence, strengthen your resilience, and really tap into and use your creativity so that you can care for yourself, for your well-being, which is super important as a business owner, and use all of those skills to help you deal with challenges and change and grow your business. So
I
that's,
love that.
yeah, it's the Nurture to Grow program. It's going to be online and it's taking part in July.
Fantastic.
Yeah.
Fantastic. My cat has just run down the stairs and meowed very
Oh,
loudly.
oh. They want to
She
join in the workshops.
she often makes an appearance in the podcast.
Oh,
Bless her.
bless
Hopefully
her.
it's not picking up too much, and I will go to her in a second. But we have got to, before we wrap up, do the quick fire round, because this is fastly becoming one of my favorite parts of my podcast, because I think you get to know a little bit about people, you know, what we were talking about, the uniqueness or the little bit of a personality, things that we might not have picked up from the episode. So if you are up for it, Grace, I've got 3 quick fire questions to ask you.
Yes, hit me. I'm ready.
Fabulous. Okay, so number 1, what is the book that has made the biggest impact on your life so far?
I think this is a really hard one. I think it's hard to know whether to go with fiction or non-fiction, but the example that comes to my mind most recently is this really sweet little book called The Lost Art of Convalescence. And it's by a man called Gavin Francis, who's a doctor. And it's a really small practical book that's about rest and recovery. So he talks about the kind of history of recovery and illness and health and well-being,
Wow.
and gives loads of practical ideas on how you can adopt some of those ways we used to look after ourselves in the modern day. And it made a huge impact on me because I went through a kind of period of burnout last year and I had some time off work and I was really looking for inspiration on how I could heal, but in a kind of natural, holistic way. And that book, yeah, I mean, I read it like 3 times at the time, and I've referred it to lots of friends. So I think, you know, yeah, it really made a huge impact on me in the last year. Yeah.
Fabulous. Well, I shall try and link to that one in the show notes as well for you
Mm-hmm.
guys. And interestingly enough, episode that I did a few weeks back with Alison Wheeler was all about burnout. So if you missed that one, I will link that in the show notes too.
Nice.
Number 2, what is your go-to snack if you're in a hurry?
I am obsessed with peanut butter. I will
Me
have it.
too.
Oh my God. I will have it straight from the tub. I will have it on apple, on toast, on celery, on porridge. I mean, like literally, it doesn't matter what it's on. I will have peanut butter.
I am with you. Are
Yeah,
you smooth or crunchy?
crunchy.
I
Oh,
can't do the crunchy. I don't know.
really?
No, I
Oh
like
my
the
God.
smooth. I am a smooth girl. But
Oh,
yeah, I have it on rice cakes with bananas every lunchtime.
yeah. Oh, yes, with banana. It's such a good combination.
It
Yeah.
is.
I
It
mean, I'd
really
eat
is.
smooth, to be honest. I don't mind
You're not
any
first.
form. I'm not fast.
Any peanut butter in any form, just give
Any
it to me.
form, exactly.
There you go. You see a unique thing that we both have in common. I love
Yes.
that.
Put that on your
And
pitch.
yeah, exactly. What is your ultimate me time thing to do?
So I really love cooking. Like cooking is one of the things I do to relax. So
Oh,
I
wow.
love to find a new recipe that I want to try. I put on a podcast. I particularly love Desert Island Discs, because it's got a bit of music and it's got a bit of chat, which is always
Yeah.
nice. And yeah, I just potter around in the kitchen cooking something really delicious. And that could be just for myself, you know. I mean, I love cooking for other people, but I'm very happy to invest an hour in cooking something tasty even if it's just for me. So
Wow.
yeah,
I
that's one of
love
my
that. And this is exactly why I do this, because it's so interesting, because people are so different. I can't stand cooking.
really.
I
God.
can't be doing with it.
Oh
I'm
my
just
God.
like, it's a means to an end for me. I don't get the romance of it. Like if me and my other half try and cook together, it's like World War III might break out, because I cannot. I'm just like, get out of my way. Just let me do it. Oh my God, why are you taking so long?
Mhm.
I can't. It just frustrates me. And I spent probably, I don't know, 16 years on my own pretty much, living on my own with my daughter, and I was cooking to feed us, and I was doing everything all by myself. So it just became a thing that had to be done. And then when my other half moved in with us, gradually I stopped cooking. I just stopped. I was cooking all the time, and then all of a sudden we got the Hello Fresh boxes for a while.
Oh yeah, great.
He was doing those recipes, and I couldn't do them. I couldn't do them with him. I just couldn't handle it. And so then I just sort of left it to him, and now he cooks all the time, and he likes it. I don't. I
mean, it sounds like you've kind of nailed it, to be honest. Do you do the washing up?
We have a dishwasher, and he is actually really good at doing the dishwasher. I lucked out. I really did.
Yeah.
Don't get me wrong, there are things that frustrate the heck out of me. Like, what did he do this morning? There was something I noticed this morning that he'd done that I was just like, why? Oh, he puts his slippers in front of the office door. So the office door is usually always open. And in the morning, he brings tea up, because he has to get up before me. So he brings a cup of tea up, and he kicks his slippers off in front of this door. So every morning I come into the office, I'm tripping over his slippers. Yet the coat door is just here on the wall, and he could put them in front of that, and that door doesn't even get open half the time because he puts his coat on the banister. He's the only one that wears one. So I'm just like, why always in front of the door? So he's not perfect, but there are some things that he does perfect well.
No one's perfect.
No one's perfect. Okay, guys, that is the end of today's episode. Grace, thank you so much for coming on the show. It's such a good conversation. We'll have to have you back again sometime.
Yeah, thank you so much. I've loved it. It's been great.
Good. All right, guys, I hope that you will tune in to the next episode. Don't forget to share this episode on Instagram. Tag me, Donna_Eid_. Are you on Instagram, Grace?
I am G Fogarty 12, and you can see some clips of my stand-up comedy if you.
Brilliant. Okay, I will link that in the show notes, guys. Tag us both on Instagram. Share your biggest takeaway from this episode, and I will see you next week. Bye for now. Don't forget to hit those stars and leave a review of the podcast where you listen if you found value in what you heard today. It's a free way you can help the podcast reach more people just like you.